Here we spent $227,000 for Big Cat's YouTube channel from USAID. We spent $14 million for social cohesion in Mali, whatever the hell that means. So I can go on and on. I got the list here, and there's more. I didn't even bring the whole list. In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear. In the days to come, you're going to see who you went to defend.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Secretary Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the United States because he hasn't done it under oath.
7 minutes, one uninterrupted monologue, and a villain list so long it's basically a campaign ad. Because this isn't just a senator asking tough questions. It's a strategy. Overwhelm the room, flood the record with moral accusations, and hope nobody notices what never gets answered. But let's confront the reality head on. If your argument is so strong, why does it require so much theater to deliver it? And what happens next shows you why.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I served together in Congress for 15 years. We didn't always agree, but I believe we shared some common values. A belief in defending democracy and human rights abroad and honoring the Constitution at home. That's why I voted to confirm you. I believed you would stand up for those principles. You haven't. You've done the opposite. And you used to speak with conviction about the importance of foreign aid as a tool to advance American values and interests. Then you stood by while Elon Musk took a chainsaw to USAID and other assistance programs. That has left a staggering toll. Broken trust with countries, openings for China and other adversaries, and countless preventable deaths of children and others. Take Sudan, for example. The freezing of U.S. humanitarian assistance forced the closure of nearly 80% of the emergency food kitchens there. 2 million famine-affected people were left without access to food. People died because of those actions. Mothers, fathers, and children. Tons of emergency food that could have saved their lives was left rotting in warehouses because you and Elon Musk refused to let USAID do its job. Sudan is a country where, by the administration's own determination, a genocide is unfolding in Darfur. But here's where it goes from cruel to despicable. While cutting off food aid to Sudanese families living through an actual genocide, you're fast-tracking white South Africans for refugee status under a manufactured claim that they are the victims of genocide. You tried to block the admission of individuals who had already been approved to come here as refugees while making bogus claims to justify granting such status to Afrikaners. You've made a mockery of our country's refugee process, turning it into a system of global apartheid where political ideology and race, more than truth or need, matter. And while you've turned away from a genocide in Sudan and invented one in South Africa, you teamed up with President Trump to throw the Ukrainian people under the bus and have been played like a fiddle by Vladimir Putin. Of course, Donald Trump not only said he would end the war in Ukraine on day one, he also said he would end the war in Gaza on day one. And yet last week, you were all running around to Gulf states, giving away very sensitive American AI and chips technology, but doing nothing to end the war in Gaza and get the remaining hostages returned. You know that for 78 days, the Netanyahu government did not allow a scrap of food to enter Gaza to reach over 2 million civilians. 57 children have died from malnutrition so far, and more than 14,000 children are in imminent danger of dying of starvation. As Cindy McCain said last week, and I quote, "Families in Gaza are starving while the food they need is sitting at the border." That is a gross violation of both U.S. and international law. What did you do? Nothing. Not once did you publicly call upon the Netanyahu government to end the blockade. Fortunately, other countries spoke out, and now we see a tiny trickle going in. Where have you focused your energy instead, Mr. Secretary? Well, your first trip as Secretary of State was to El Salvador, not to promote democracy, but to cozy up to President Bukele, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. The result? was a cash for collusion deal to deprive people living in America of their constitutional rights to due process. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision, instructed you to facilitate the return to the United States of Abrego Garcia, who the administration admitted was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. Your response? You've openly flouted judicial orders. When asked whether you have been in touch with El Salvador to return Abrego Garcia, you boasted, quote, "I would never tell you that. And you know who else I would never tell? A judge." Clearly, you don't care about the Fifth Amendment right to due process, and you don't care about the First Amendment either, since you've been very busy snatching students off of college campuses for exercising their right to free speech. You dredged up a relic from the McCarthy era to claim that student protesters posed a threat to the foreign policy of the United States. Give me a break, Mr. Secretary. You know as well as I do this isn't about national security. It's about punishing free speech. And you know that in America, the government doesn't get to use its power to punish speech it doesn't like. Yet in March, you boasted about revoking student visas, saying, and I'm quoting, "We do it every day. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visa," unquote. Let's look at one of those lunatics, Mr. Secretary, Ms. Ozturk. Her crime was co-authoring an op-ed in her college paper critical of Tufts University's response to the war in Gaza. Your own department found zero links to terrorism, no anti-Semitic statements, but you still yanked her visa and shipped her off to detention in Louisiana. And the list goes on and on. The federal judge in the case of Mohsen Madawi, who is the Columbia student who was ambushed by federal agents at his citizenship appointment, said, and I quote, this is the judge, "Legal residents not charged with crimes or misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on the political issues of the day. Our nation has seen times like this before, especially during the Red Scare and Palmer raids. Like the McCarthy-era witch hunts of the 1950s, your campaign of fear and repression is eating away at foundational values of our democracy. Back then, it took one voice, Attorney Joseph Welch, to cut through the hysteria with the simple question that marked the beginning of the end of that shameful era. He asked Senator McCarthy, have you no sense of decency? And I would ask you the same, Secretary Rubio. But you have shown through your words and your actions what the answer is. And I have to tell you directly and personally that I regret voting for you for Secretary of State. I yield back.
Did you catch what just happened? What you watched wasn't oversight. It was a moral indictment, delivered like a closing argument, designed to leave one impression. This man is guilty. Not guilty of a bad call, guilty of being the wrong kind of person. And that's the tell. Because when someone stacks global tragedies like bricks, Sudan, Gaza, Ukraine, refugees, student protests, the goal isn't clarity, it's weight. It's to make you feel that questioning anything at all is immoral. But let's confront the reality head on. A Senate hearing is supposed to be about specifics, trade-offs, programs, outcomes, accountability. Instead, you get a performance that overwhelms the room, so the most important question never lands. What exactly are we funding? And who decided it? This isn't just foreign aid. It's a system that survives by staying too complicated to audit and too sacred to challenge. So the language escalates, cruel, despicable, threat to democracy, until the only acceptable response is submission. That isn't persuasion. That's a moral cage. And then the moment the speech ends, everything shifts. Because the second it's time for answers, the strategy changes from sermon to soundbite. Rubio doesn't open with a dissertation. He opens with a blunt message. Your regret doesn't shame me. It confirms I'm doing the job you hate. Then comes the move Democrats fear most, dragging the debate down from the clouds to the receipts. Numbers, examples, line items, the kind of details regular people can judge without a translator. And notice what happens when it turns concrete. The pushback becomes procedural, under oath, unsubstantiated, a judge said, a court ordered. Not because procedure doesn't matter, but because procedure is a safe escape hatch when accountability gets dangerous. Then Rubio plants the principle he wants the public to hear: separation of powers. Courts don't run diplomacy. Diplomacy doesn't work if every conversation becomes a press release. Whether you agree or not, it's meant to sound like stability, like adults in charge, while the other side sounds like they want foreign policy run by court order and cable news pressure. And finally, the cultural nerve: student visas. Here's the hard truth. A visa isn't citizenship. It's permission. It's access. And access has terms. You can debate where the line is. You can demand due process. But the broader move from the left is always the same. Frame enforcement itself as tyranny. Frame consequences as cruelty. Because if consequences are authoritarian, rules become impossible. So the real question isn't who landed the sharper insult. It's this: are we becoming a country where spending is protected by emotion and shame? Where policy becomes moral theater? Where you're told to stop asking questions or you're a bad person? Or are we still allowed to look at a program, look at a number, look at an outcome, and ask, why are we paying for this? Who approved it? And why are they so terrified of sunlight? Because when accountability becomes hate, it means someone is hiding something.